have with me Kiran Deshpande. He was at TCS for many years. Then was the CEO at Tech Mahindra. Was a founder. Is a very active angel investor. Is on the global board of TAI, global board of IIT Bombay Alumni Association. Also happens to be my dad. I am not at all surprised by this table of contents, things that you wanted to talk about. And
your grandfather was not eligible for pension. He died too early. He was 36. So there was no pension.
exactly my age.
Exactly your age. In the 70s, all of us were socialists.
Correct.
Very few were anything else. Your daddy told me two things. कितने भी बड़े बनो, पैर जमीन पे होने चाहिए. Second is, when it comes to ethics, नीति, इसको कभी compromise नहीं.
See, when we go to central Delhi and when we walk the halls, and on one side there's the residence of the Prime Minister, then there's the Chief Justice of India residence, and Speaker of Lok Sabha. I can see that you feel like you belong there very much.
I actually wanted to go to, I did a major in political science. He was the one who said, जिंदगी भर झोला लेके नहीं घूमना है प्रोफेसर, तुमको engineering करनी. In the washroom, somebody put a painting called Poverty Sucks. So I finally found out the gentleman. I said, poverty doesn't suck. If you don't remove the poverty, that attitude sucks. If you exploit poor people, that attitude sucks. Poverty doesn't suck.
Welcome to another extremely unique and interesting episode of the Barbershop. I have with me Kiran Deshpande, who is someone I write about extensively. In his previous professional avatar, he was at TCS for many years, where he started his career. Then was the CEO at Tech Mahindra after a few stints at IMR, and then was a founder of Airtight Networks, earlier called Vibhu, then Airtight, then Mojo. Started the company in 2003 and exited in 2019. Runs marathons, is a fitness freak, loves music, is a very active angel investor, is on the global board of TAI, global board of IIT Bombay Alumni Association, and in general an extremely fun guy. Also happens to be my dad. Welcome to the Barbershop.
Thank you, Shantanu. It's such a privilege and pleasure to be here.
I knew that when none of my guests come prepared. So whenever I call someone into the barbershop, they're like, hey, how should I prepare? And I said, don't prepare, because these are conversations that are like rivers. They have to flow along their own way. So most people come in with some sets, and they're all people who give interviews and are in the press a lot and so on. So they don't need preparation. But I am not at all surprised by this table of contents with like a whole host of things that you wanted to talk about and all the things.
And my question.
So I think you bring a certain amount of discipline to my life also, which is very much needed. But for our viewers, given Barbershop is about entrepreneurship, and I think I can have a separate episode with Dad about entrepreneurship, because he's fundamentally the reason why in my head entrepreneurship was always the real career choice, because he gave up entrepreneurship after being one of the youngest CEOs in corporate India and being very successful at it. But at the age of 50, with 2 grown-up kids, he became an entrepreneur. And we'll have a separate episode on that. But Dad, today wanted to talk to you about your actual core passion, which is nation building and what makes India from a historic standpoint. I know you read a lot about it, and Mom and I often joke that you were very much in the cabinet and in the parliament sessions when all of our
Just around where the prime ministers,
very much with the prime ministers, and also you have political ambitions. So you're a student of politics, a student of nation building, student of policy. So today's episode actually wanted to go deeper into that element and how it ties into your life as a as a career technocrat, entrepreneur, and now investor, right? So let's start on the beginning. You're born in 1955. And I was thinking about this episode, and you have always have had very people-leaning points of view, right? Very pro-government, so left-leaning points of view, and kind of you must have gone in and out because you're a capitalist as an entrepreneur, not a socialist from thinking that way. But both your parents, your father, who unfortunately passed away very early, but was a police officer in the government services. Your mother became a teacher in the government services. So service life in the government was a part of upbringing?
Sort of the osmosis comes in
Okay.
as to the role of the government.
Ah.
And, Shantanu, as you grow, and I'm sure it happens to all of us, you start looking back in life and see what helped you. And somewhere or the other, I find government does play a role. So whatever we may all think that, government is bad, government is this, politicians are bad, I think governments do play a big role. And in fact, I had national scholarship, which every time I got that 110 rupees, I always felt that there was someone who was hungry that could have been served with this. So this dimag mein rehta hai na, so it sort of grows on you. I think you have to create wealth for everyone. And as you know, in the 70s, all of us were socialists.
Correct.
Very few were anything else. And then we realized last 100, 150 years, 200 years, I think the world has experimented with several isms, and I think we have a better understanding of where we want to go. So, ये सब वहीं से आता है मतलब.
But talk about your childhood and what got you interested in what was your first memory of the Prime Minister? I think it was Pandit Nehru, right?
It was Pandit Nehru. Interestingly, he came to Bhopal somewhere in 1960 or so. I must have been 5-year-old. And your grandfather, my dad was in the special protection. I think he was a research officer, special protection. So the Prime Minister's motorcade, and Prime Minister Nehru was fond of children and Rose. So there were 4 or 5 children with Rose to be given to him.
So you had a rose to give him, is it?
Yeah. So everybody ran, and I was not the one to rush or do anything first. I was sort of standing behind, and then his vehicle waited, and he was in an open jeep, and so I gave him the rose. That was I don't think I realized.
Do you remember it?
I remember the instance, but its profoundness came much later when I realized who prime ministers are. That's when you realize, you met a prime minister. Yeah.
Correct. You're a big fan of Pandit Nehru.
Yes. If you see Indian independence, say 1900 onwards, before that, I think we were lucky to have a galaxy of people.
From the independence movement.
From Dadabhai Naoroji to all the way to, the mutiny of 1857 to the late 19th century, to, leaders who were there from at that time to arrival of Mahatma Gandhi, Tilak, Gokhale, Savarkar, Lala Lajpat Rai, Chittaranjan Das, Bose, not just Subhash Chandra Bose, but his brother. There were a galaxy of leaders who somehow shaped the thinking that we need to be an independent nation. And like many Indians, I don't have any grudge against the British. I have a lot of friends. As a Tech Mahindra CEO, we used to have wonderful time in London. But those are different times. But I think that even some of the leaders who went off to Pakistan, they were part of the movement to get independence.
Yeah, intellectual stalwarts, right?
Intellectual stalwarts, absolutely.
Even Bhagat Singh, like at age 23, what he used to write.
Bhagat Singh was just, I cannot imagine a person of that caliber who was intellectually and physically so strong. And just to share with you, my dad, your grandfather was posted in the dacoit area, where he had a very successful stint in taming down the dacoits in Morena and all that.
Correct.
And then he was moved to Bhopal as a research officer, doing research on juvenile crime.
Wow.
So
we have some of his writings in our
We have some of his writings on a lot of these things. So I don't think you realize it when you're when you go to high school, and then when you go to college, and then you get, luckily, I studied reasonably well, got good marks, good college. You start thinking about life. And just to share with you, when I was in the school, in our high school, जिसको हम उच्चतर माध्यमिक, उच्चतर means higher secondary, madhyamik, there was a course which was optional. I mean, the course was compulsory. Everybody had to do it. Whether you pass or fail, it didn't matter in the school. Manav Dharma.
Manav Dharma.
Manav Dharma.
This is in
9th, 10th and 11th.
Madhya Pradesh State Board.
No, it was, our school had it.
Okay.
Our school, our principal, Bireshwar Chakravarti, very well-known academic of that time, he felt that children needed to understand global dharma, if I can use. So, and it had articles on Tolstoy, Gandhi, Christ, Harishchandra, Chanakya. I mean, it was fairly dense for a 9th or 10th grader. So, I actually understood social service and civics from there, because there was another course, social studies, Samajik Adhyayan. So, I started putting these
Samajik what?
Adhyayan. Social studies, it's exactly the same thing. So, you asked me to use Hindi, and I thought I will.
You went directly to that.
We went to that. Because that's how we used to speak. We never said social studies, always Samajik Adhyayan.
Correct.
Samanya Vigyan, general science, whatever. So, I started putting the two together, and then you say, okay, there is service here. There is Indore municipality, which comes and clean. Doesn't clean every time, but there is someone who's cleaning the street for you.
Correct.
So, I got sensitized to it.
This is the late 60s.
69, 70, 71, before I came out of the school.
Correct.
Next step was, the course.
But at that time, were there discussions in the family? I know you lost your father very early, when you were 7. But when you grew up and your mom was teaching, and you had friends and the entire family was in Indore, did you and your cousins or people talk about?
Couple of cousins, I would, but they thought I was speaking because I was the younger one from these cousins, and chup baith tu bahut zyada kya manu vagera types. But we did have few discussions. One of my chacha, he sort of saw this and he said, "Tum IAS kyun nahi karte ho?" So, I mean, I was in 9th or 10th, and I said, "Look, that's not what I want to do. I want to understand this, but that's not what I want to do." And I also probably remarked to him that this is an institution that came from colonialism, and so I shall not be part of it.
A school child, and the Union Public Services is a colonial.
It's an Indian civil service. So, I mean, I was 9th grader. So, I mean, I think Indian civil service is one of the best in the world. I think.
Correct.
They tackle very hard problems. I have some good friends who have done that. So it's like JEE. This is another track that gets the best out there. Government is a good platform for doing many things, but I got introduced to this side beyond physics, chemistry, and mathematics, which was our main core. Yes,
correct. But it stayed with you. And BITS Pilani also kind of shaped it because it was a very independent educational institution, had a lot of courses on humanities, civics,
right.
economics.
We had, just to give you, I don't know how far we came in the BA honors degree, but we had 2 courses on political science.
Okay.
Introduction to political science, and there was a course on modern constitution.
Okay.
And then there were 3 courses in economics, microeconomics, introduction, econometrics. There was a course on philosophy. There was a course on symbolic logic. There were 6, 7, 8, 9 courses.
You remember all of these courses?
I remember the courses. Yes, I remember the courses. I also remember, Professor God, who took the political science. That's the first time I understood the difference between politics and political science. And then during that time, somewhere I must have chanced on Karl Marx's readings, and then capitalism. Also, I understood that before, Industrial Revolution, before that, people who had money were the owners of wealth. And then there was exploitation. And that's how I think the reaction was, nobody has wealth. So they created another set of problems.
Correct.
But I think the isms, we understood, socialism and all this in that political science. Also, how a state is organized. All of this was first year, second year, third year, somewhere around that. I got an A grade in that because I was one of the few students who was interested. My hostel पागल आदमी है यार, इसको क्या कौन सा कोर्स पसंद आता है इसको.
But it was elective. You chose to take it or everyone had to do it?
No, everywhere. See, BITS degree, what we had was BE honors. And that honors meant you had to do some of this. So there was some, you could take one against one or other, but you had to take one of them. In fact, modern constitution, I had a bit of an altercation with my prof.
Okay.
In the second or third test, we used to have these periodic tests. So the question was, who do you think is more powerful, the president or the prime minister? So I did an analysis. One is head of the state, other one is head of the government. And when it comes to formation of the government, if there is a hung parliament, and this is all third year, there is a hung parliament.
You're 18-year-old, 20-year-old.
Oh, yeah, so around 20 years old, 19-year-old. There is a hung parliament, and by the way, 70 there was no hung parliament. So if there is a parliament of that kind, is the president who has to decide who is the leader of the house. Because in parliamentary democracy, which is what we have inherited, good part of we are a Westminster style parliamentary democracy.
Correct.
So the leader of the house is typically the person who is the leader of the majority party.
Correct.
So that's when you ask them to invite and form the government. So if that doesn't happen, it's the president who decides.
Correct.
And interestingly, some of these issues came down the line when India had
right after, right?
Right. Prime Minister Bajpayee lost the vote of confidence. The coalition governments came. So he gave me like 5 out of 15 or something. And I was not the one to, I had an argument with him. Then we had somebody else, and then he kind of increased it to like 8 marks. But that was good understanding of. I think it was there. Plus the economics also. Then during that time, I think third year or fourth year, I read about the Kennedy School of Government. So, then this was like a parallel thing besides Marconi and Schrodinger and all of this, the core engineering and science.
But your friends would remark that you have to go to JNU and study that and not stay in British Pilani?
Actually, I'll tell you what, it's interesting you mentioned this. 72 or 73, I don't recall, around that time.
Your engineering was 71 to 76. Right?
75 year
engineering course.
70 to 76. If you see the Constitution of India, the Constituent Assembly, it started working around 1946, then finalized in 49, and India became a republic. Sovereign republic in 1950.
Correct.
That's what we celebrate 26 January.
Correct.
So we all, people should know that that's when India became republic.
Correct.
But
what were we between 1947 to 1950?
Dominion.
We were a dominion. And what's the difference?
This is Dominion is there was monarchy, the king, the governor general, so we would have been part of the British, this thing. Now we are an independent state, ultimate sovereign, absolute power. If I can put it in simple terms, so we can use some, terminology, but, it's like we are ourselves. There is a president who is the head of the state. There is a prime minister who is the elected government, leads the government, de facto leader of the nation. I think it is important to know that there are people who may have voted against a party, but when you form the government, you become prime minister and you form a cabinet. So you're the head of the government, so you kind of leader of the entire nation, including everyone. And some of our prime ministers, including the current prime ministers, have remarked that. Elections have been like that, but good part. And I think the beauty of a democracy is, meaningful dissent. So, meaningful dissent means I may not agree with you on everything, but there are fundamentals on which we are together and our objectives are the same. Our methods may be different, approach may be different, fundamentally we are better. We are not fighting with each other. as there's a conflict as such. There will
So
be difference.
the goodwill of the nation is a aligned objective.
Absolutely.
Our paths may be different.
Our past may be different, and you can see this in the, if you see the pre-independence or independent, the leaders, human beings, it was a very momentous, big occasion. Disruptive ideas came. For example, Mahatma Gandhi brought some very disruptive ideas. So it was difficult for people to accept that, all that. So they had different ways to do that.
Correct.
But everybody was aligned on what was needed for India, including some very extreme views, if you take. And that is what interested me, that if you have individuals of that caliber who can disagree but have the same objective, I think democracy is good. So,
Correct. I mean, we kind of experimented with it back and forth, but you were in your heyday of Pilani, just graduating or towards the senior, like you're in third, fourth year, when
I actually wanted to go to, I did a major in political science. I thought that would have been better for me. And, Praveen, I think he was the one who said, जिंदगी में झोला लेके नहीं घूमना है प्रोफेसर, तो कोई इंजीनियरिंग करनी.
No, but you would have been equally good as a political science student.
I would have made a good career there. I would have loved it. I've continued to, as you know, I continue to read about it.
I can see when we go to central Delhi and when we walk the halls, and on one side there's the residence of the Prime Minister, then there's the Chief Justice of India,
The Chief Justice of India.
Speaker of Lok Sabha. I can see that you feel like you belong there very much.
I'm very naturally there rather than the entrepreneur and technology.
and angel investor. I think you belong in that group a lot.
I should have been there, as you always said. I think, we were coming back to 72, 73. This Kesavananda Bharati case, and we'll talk about it a little bit later.
No, we can talk about it now.
Yeah. So this was the
What
land.
was, we were not born. I think most of us we were not born.
Judgment. See, the Constitution went through changes, and the founding fathers or the Constitution Assembly clearly recognized the fact that you cannot create a permanent document.
Okay.
In fact, there was a debate about how flexible should it be and how rigid should it be. And it's a difficult call. So I think what is interesting about India is that the amendments there is flexibility, at the same time there is a solid canvas.
A lot of people say our constitution has been amended too many times and so on, but that reflects the flexibility in the founding writers that the world will evolve and the country will evolve and the constitution.
And they were aware of it. They were aware of it that it will evolve. And ours is not just a secular, ours is also a socialistic structure.
Correct.
See the diversity of India. People say in the West, God-fearing. We're a God-loving country.
Correct.
So we have humanized God. We have, people love God. 70% of front-facing businesses are Balaji, Guru, all this stuff. So we are Sai. That's the country. And now you're trying to put that into modern perspective of governance.
Correct.
I'm not saying West or East or modern perspective of governance. So that was expected. Having said that, I think so there was small, major this thing. Kesavananda Bharati was a case where right to property or someone runs something and the government takes it over. So there was a fair amount of this thing. I think it was a largest Supreme Court Constitution bench of 13 judges. And
what was the case? What was the right
case was, can the government have does the parliament have absolute power? I'm trying to explain in simple terms. There was a view that parliament is the body that represents
God.
People, So they have the right to make amendments, right, with a due structure. Having said that, the basic fundamentals, genesis or structure of the Constitution, which is fundamental rights, preamble, right to equality, justice, fundamental rights, right to property, right to redress in case you are being exploited, all of that basics structure should not be changed. So there's a bit quite a bit. Justice Khanna, if I recall, I think he wrote a doctrine that has came to be known as a basic doctrine, and it has been formally adopted by some of the other nations also, that when you have a constitution, the fundamental structure of the constitution cannot change. So all of this came together in the Kesavananda Bharati case.
Who Kesavananda Bharati?
Kesavananda Bharati was a gentleman out of Kerala.
Okay.
It was him versus the government of India.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, and what was he saying?
His view, the view was that I think he ran a institution, he ran something there, and government wanted to take over or wanted to run it. And it was his personal wealth. You can't do that. That's my wealth. At that time, right to property, which was fundamental right, was taken off has been taken off the fundamental right. It's a human right in India now. So you have right to property. Government can acquire it for public good, but not without paying you
fair value.
Fair value.
So if they want to lay a pipeline or a railway track, they would buy that piece of land from you.
They cannot just run over you.
And before Kesavananda Bharati, they could just...
It was fundamental. It was enshrined in the constitution as a fundamental right. Just imagine in the 40s, when country was poor, hungry, these noble men and women came together to write down one of the most modern constitution. Yes, it is a bulkier constitution. Yes. It is bulky because of the nature of it. Now, American
the country is very, like,
diverse.
There are hundreds of countries in one place.
And if you go back 60, 70 years, tell me, after you left Istanbul, there was democracy. There was no democracy all the way up to Australia. So now you're thinking...
That is so true.
It always baffled me that, and we had one of the...
So east of Istanbul, 75 years back, we were the...
I think we were the first one. We were the first one. Adult suffrage. On the crack of the constitution, universal franchise in India was given to all people, men and women. There was no differentiation. Universal franchise came, but initially it came because of religion, because of noble prosperity, wealth, only men, then women were added. But India had the advantage, having seen all that, but also people were wise enough to say, and we know we are not a perfect society, there is a lot of diversity happens, but the structure was given. And I think so, as a student, as someone who was getting scholarship and studying, I was being helped because of my academics. I was kind of conscious of my responsibility to the society, which I have seen stark poverty around us. And I'm very glad that we have moved from there. There are a lot of poor people in India still, but I think we have moved to a point where I think we have a shot at now removing poverty. Independent of the political dispensation, independent of who comes. You look at all prime ministers. If you make a table of whatever 2 or 3 things each prime minister has done extremely well and where they made a mistake. And you will find the table on both sides.
Correct.
Or type of table on both sides. And I think when you become prime minister, even if you were there, like Chandrasekhar was there for 4 months, and his tenure for 4 months was very good.
Yeah.
To a point where opposition was scared of he might win the election. So the plug was pulled and he had to resign, and then came the election. So, but I think the beauty of all of that as a political science student is that in a democracy, you will have political parties with right, left leaning agendas, and there will be electoral politics. Let us not forget that. When the political parties are, there will be electoral politics. Somebody will win, somebody will lose, somebody will do very well and still lose, like Narasimha Rao.
Yeah.
Right, stuff like that. Someone like Prime Minister Modi will spring out of nowhere and take the nation by storm.
Yeah.
The sheer personality, right? But do you think he will not make a mistake? He might. That's human. It's like you have been CEO, I have been CEO. We have made mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
It's just that our the impact of a prime ministerial mistake is very big, and the impact of prime ministerial good thing is also very big.
Correct.
So that's sort of, so I was kind of aware of all this right through my journey.
But let's talk about prime ministers who made an impact. I think Pandit Nehru is someone you talk about a lot in terms of someone who created institutions in poverty-ridden India, where the impact of partition was still being felt. People had not settled in their home. Assets were all over the place. For him to think about setting up institutions of excellence like the IITs, like ISRO, etc., was tremendously visionary. I know he gets a lot of criticism today for a lot of other things. But if you were to take his left
view,
and right, his hits included some of India's most long-lasting and most value-creating institutions.
Absolutely. IITs and IIMs are known, and everybody gives him credit. I think no doubt about it. We had this Vande Bharat trains that have come out.
Correct.
Integral coach factory. Is one of the Indian Railways are one of the best. British has set it up, but ICF was set up in the 50s to be the largest coach making factory.
Correct.
Atomic energy.
Under his
it was during Nehru's time. I think 50s and 60s on nation building.
Correct.
Nation building. And if you also see
Indian coach factory, is it?
I think Indian coach factory. I see. Yeah. Coach factory. I've been there a couple of times. The size, scale, and the technology,
insane.
Their understanding of railways baffles me. It's an unknown secret. Very recently I saw a TED talk by one of the retired general manager, and having been there, I think those institutions were set up. If you see the research institutions that are there, we can complain about how effective they are, but we have everything. Institute of Oceanography, everything that is needed for a country to be scientifically prospering, we have it. Where we lived, National Chemical Lab, NCL is just around the corner.
Yeah.
NCL is just around the corner. So also the longevity today, when a new IIT is set up, a new IIM is set up, an ISER comes out, it is a minimum standard. I would like to ask, take a private college of the best type, other than probably Indian Institute of Science
and Pilani.
The top colleges are always government. So I think that was a legacy he left.
Which is very unlike the US, where education institutions of note are mostly privatized.
There are state schools there also. University of California is a good state school. But US, had the, it didn't have the problems we had of poverty.
Correct.
Not that depression was bad for them. Before that it was bad.
But post-World War I and especially post-World War II, I think suburban American dream was really taking them forward. Privatization of education made sense. In our case, we had 100 crore mouths to feed. At that time, lesser.
40 crore mouths.
40 crore mouths to feed and 10 crore.
It has always hit me. 5 years of national scholarships and 2 years of MTech 400 rupees. I have always felt guilty.
You got 7 years of education,
free education,
funded by the government.
Free education.
Pilani and IIT Bombay.
I will, therefore, whosoever is there, you need to give it. Finally, who is the government? Government is of people. And where are the people? People are here. If you collect the tax and, you give it to where it is needed. And it was given when the country was poor. That's one thing. I also feel that I think India set an example for moving away from imperialism, not just independence. That's my view. And I think many African nations became free from colonialism, imperialism. I think the time had come for some of those things to make a change. But somebody has to guide it. Yeah. So that was, I think, just the way United States freedom movement showed that a new nation can be born. I think India showed that a colonial nation can be freed on very modern principles, carrying forward the old culture. So we have our own issues. Yeah. But I think my view is that See, you don't get to top 3 or top 5, whatever be your yardstick, without some successes.
Correct.
And there have been series of successes. For example, you take Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Everybody knows, we talk about it. She, I think, was the one who brought satellite to India.
Correct.
She was very, very passionate about it. Project Tiger started in her time.
What
So-
Project Tiger?
Project Tiger is Save the Tiger. So, and if you go down the list, like, for example, current Prime Minister, I think he's put yoga on the table. He put Swachhata on the table. So it becomes a national movement. People become sensitized about it. So you'll see every Prime Minister, somewhere Nehru got the scientific temper and the modern things. That was his view of it. I think Prime Minister Shastri was very instrumental in 2 things, in my opinion. One was, I think, the food shortage. He took some steps. Whatever little I know, I think we got over food shortage because of all the actions he took. And he made all of us free, because 1965 war was with him. Unfortunately, he passed away right after that. But Indians felt good after 1965 war. I am not particularly for any war with anyone.
Correct.
But if you have to get into a fight, you might as well win.
Yeah. Agree.
So
If you're in a fight, you have to win.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you were kind of a beneficiary of the government getting deeply involved in making education accessible to people across economic strata. I know, and we talk about this a lot, and I have spoken about it on on social media and so on, as to how after your father passed away, after Dada Zoba passed away, your family, Akka and the four siblings,
Right.
were thrown into
Off the cliff.
abject poverty and helplessness. I mean, you had family to depend on, but at
The
a very,
social family depend on, but she had to do a job.
she had to. I think she had to study.
She used
To
to
first
study,
become a
do a
teacher.
job, and your grandfather was not eligible for pension. He died too early. He was 36, so there was no pension.
Exactly my age.
Exactly your age. So he didn't wake up one morning. So, but he had a good record. So she got a job. There was no, these days, if something like that happens, either private or public, we have done that.
Yeah.
All of you have seen that. I've seen that, and I immediately get the spouse or whosoever is a dependent. Those things didn't exist at that time. So what worked was school saying very minimal fee, no fee, national scholarship. Because your dadi was a teacher, I didn't pay tuition fee at all at BITS Pilani.
Not a rupee.
No, it was waived. Now, can you imagine all of this happening today? We are a prosperous nation, but we somehow find it difficult to provide free education. I find it, to me, it's a dichotomy that we have more money. Other day I heard the Minister for, Infrastructure, Gadkari, very proud. He said, I have enough money, you tell me and I'll build the road. And I felt so good about it. There are resources. I think education has brought us, the Indian medical professionals were abroad before IT went.
Yeah.
Engineering education got us software. We are, power in software. I think our luck was that I would say 2 or 3, 4 people whose vision was very futuristic. That software is going to be the future, and India will play a big role. When we could not import simple computer, it's like a entrepreneurial thinking of big time, that you sitting in a garage, we're thinking of a 1 trillion valuation company. So all of this came because of education. All of this came, and we had some base of education from where the expansion of colleges could take place. So there's a lot of, in India, nothing works perfectly because there are elements will try to exploit the situation. But if you look at it from a nation or a government standpoint, the whole behemoth has moved forward in a manner to a point where we are now a, powerful nation, kind of admired.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I remember I was in the US very recently, and I went for the haircut. Your brother Yash took me to him. I was sitting there, and he said, "How do you want?" I said, "There's very little on my hair. I just need something to say." So I said, "Where you live?" I said, "I live in India." "Oh, you guys are very rich. You spend a lot of money on, weddings." See
The average barber in the US.
average barber in the US think that we are rich because we can spend money on weddings.
Would never happen when you guys were living there.
Never. In fact, through TCS, I was sent to US in 1985 for business development, and I was sent to Dallas. So, you take the business executive suites, where you share this thing. I took a suite, and it cost, I didn't, we were always careful with dollars. So, in the washroom, somebody put a painting called "Poverty Sucks." I saw it in 3 days. So I went to the admin. I said, "Who's put that?" So she said, "I'll get it removed."
Really?
Yes. So I finally found out the gentleman. I said, "Poverty doesn't suck. If you don't remove the poverty, that attitude sucks. If you exploit poor people, that attitude sucks. Poverty doesn't suck." So from there to where we are, I think.
No, I think I also talk about this a lot, right? Because think about it. You studied on government scholarship. I think lived hand to mouth as in school, and then did your masters. And you should talk about the decision between taking a job and doing your masters. Like, how did you decide that?
Because they see, when we came out, there were not many jobs.
97, 76.
76. The jobs were generally in public sector. Going abroad was not there, because
Why not?
Because writing TOEFL required 300 rupees. It's just, you and the good thing is at young age, you don't feel it. यार ये नहीं करना है, अपने में पैसा नहीं है, जान दो इसको. That kind of stuff.
And IIM and all that?
There was no funding. IIT gave you scholarship for 400 rupees to do a master's.
But IIM, there had to be a...
I don't think so. At that time, our time, it was, the CAT didn't exist.
Every IIM had its own.
Every IIM had its own. I think IIT Madras and Institute of Science are joined. IIT Bombay has its own exam. Kanpur had its own exam and all that. But once you pass that exam, and if you got the admission, the scholarship came with it. And the scholarship was good enough.
400 rupees a month.
400 rupees, that's a lot of money. That time there was a lot of money. It was good amount of money. Then I actually saved some money.
Okay.
Saved some money from there. So, the government kind of 100% subsidized education.
And your salary in the job you had gotten out of Pilani also was something similar?
400 rupees.
Oh, so in one
maybe 50 rupees or 50 or 60 rupees more. I was getting a job in Mumbai, which was like 550 rupees or something like that. But then in IIT, I have a hostel to live and a subsidized food. IIT food is not all that great, but there is food, 3-4 meals you get.
Correct.
You don't have to pay for the cook or something. It gave you a degree. It gave you a master's degree. In fact, my prof wanted me to do a PhD, and he introduced me to a scientist at TIFR, saying, "I think you apply for it." Then I was in signal processing and all that. And then I realized that that would have been stretching the family too far doing a PhD. Because PhD is 4 or 5 years of commitment.
And you need to start earning money to send back to your mom?
We to start earning money. You better start earning money. You can't expect government to keep paying for you.
And you were the oldest sibling also.
Oldest sibling. So, those responsibilities existed. But I think the thing is, relatively very few people were rich at that time. So you can say it is good or bad. You never felt, that's
different.
The difference between rich and poor, that delta hits people. If I'm not saying if everybody is poor, it's bad. I mean, that's what the communist world brought. That, nobody has money, but some people have, absolute power, and there is no responsibility towards the society. I think that was the failure of that experiment. I think what we are seeing right now, and that's my personal view, that we are seeing the extreme end of capitalism now, where some confluence of technology, everything, job creation is not as much as the growth of GDP and all that. That is number one. Number two, the difference between rich and poor continues to grow. So some structural changes need to happen. I think I may be, a bit radical here. People don't like to pay tax. And I think one of the reason is they don't see tax, rupee or dollar or whatever, being put to good use. Well, I think some structural changes there. If I'm making money, some amount of money government take, but somewhere it gives me an option that I want to give money, but here is where I will give money. Give it to education, give it to healthcare, some freedom to do that so that we start bringing this thing. And minimum, I mean, that's the ideal view of all isms, capitalism, socialism, everything that you want. Nobody should go hungry, and the respect, the fraternity that is in the Indian Constitution, US Constitution, British have got it by the convention. The fraternity, that means respect and dignity of an individual, that should not go down. I mean, many times, I have gone on the road and we see someone who's carrying a, and it hits you.
Yeah.
Why does this individual have to go through such a pain to make a living?
Correct.
That has to disappear somewhere. I think all of us have to try. I don't think we have figured it out so far, in spite of all our intellect and everything.
No, I agree. No, I was kind of trying to draw parallels between you graduated from BITS Pilani around the time the emergency was going to happen.
Yes.
What was happening outside BITS Pilani at that time? It must be fair, like you would be reading it in the newspapers or would be seeing it on or listening to it on the radio and so on. What was the political environment at that time?
See, what happened, I'll tell you what happened was a series of the Prime Minister after Bangladesh creation was seen as very successful.
Which year was this?
1971.
Correct.
That. So
she was the prior, like
she was, yeah, and I think that war, 1971 war, India did everything. The army, everybody, including the Prime Minister, everybody came together very well. And one of the things that has happened, which should continue, is in the moments of such serious issue, political differences are set aside.
Correct.
I think that piece has not, that particular piece where this is too big to fight over politics, I think that doesn't happen these days. That should happen. Having said that, I think Bangladesh got created. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was in fact, the combined Pakistan, he would have been the Prime Minister, and that was the main issue, that West Pakistan at that time didn't want it, all that stuff. So she became very powerful. The election, she won it hands down. She nationalized banks that time. Now, like demonetization, if you talk to 10 people on demonetization, you'll find 5 people who support it, 5 people oppose it.
Okay.
But I think, looking at it it was a step that shook the nation.
Why? What was the impact of that?
Because
on the ground, for you and me as depositors, what are they?
For depositors, there was no impact.
Okay.
What it did, though, in the long run was Indian banking went into deep villages and everywhere.
Because of nationalization.
So the expanse of banking that you see, nationalization did play a role.
Okay.
Then she stopped the privy purses. When India, when it became independent, there were broadly 2 aspects, keeping it very simple. Those princely run states.
Correct.
Right? Those kingdoms which owed to British, but they were autonomous. Exactly. Junagadh, all that stuff. And they were British administered India. So what British did was, British administered India was straightway transition to the dominion, the new Prime Minister Nehru's government. The rest of them, which Vallabhbhai Patel pulled together, right? These privy purses came. So all these
privy purses.
That was called privy.
What does this mean?
We're taking the state from you. We give you money to live your life.
Really?
She abolished that also, Indira Gandhi. So these were gutsy steps, right? So she was riding high. Then hit the oil, OPEC came. The oil prices went up. The food shortage, the inflation, corruption had started happening. It had started increasing. Not that corruption was not there, but it started. People were getting visibly upset about it. So Jayaprakash Narayan started the student movement in Bihar and Gujarat.
Bihar and Gujarat.
Bihar and Gujarat, yes. So many of the leaders that we see, they are actually JP students from that time. That got her into the headwind was too heavy for her. In that whole process in 75,
There was like anti-incumbency sentiment, is it?
and big time.
Oh, is it?
Yes. Because see, all the inflation had gone up, shortages were there. Oil prices, when the oil price goes up, the whole economy shakes down. Right?
Correct. Everything becomes expensive.
Everything becomes expensive, and we didn't have today India can afford to buy. There is a rich foreign exchange. Country exports, imports a lot, much bigger economy. At that time, it was very vulnerable. And, just 5-6 years back, she had to, PL 480 funds had come, she had to devalue rupees. So she had all that stuff. Pakistan war drained 8 to 9 million refugees came. We had to look after that. There's a whole bunch of, it was a tough time for, as you say, if I was sitting next to the Prime Minister, I would be difficult problems to solve. In the whole process, what happened was her election was declared null and void by Justice Sinha, Allahabad High Court. So I don't recall what were the technical ground which the election, Prime Minister's election was null. So she cannot remain Prime Minister. So she declared emergency is a provision in Indian Constitution.
So the elections happened, but they were declared null and void. Why?
Null and void. There must have been some misuse, something, somewhere must have happened. I don't recall what was that, but that happened. Now, with that, she suspended the Constitution.
And unilateral, is it?
Unilateral. It was middle of the night. The president was asked to sign the order. And the next day, all editorials came blank. Suspend, freedom of press gone. Leaders were put behind bar. Our family overnight. Our family doctor spent 19 months in prison in Indore. If you were not in Congress of that time, many people spent.
These are all public critics of. You'll have to speak a little louder. These are all public critics of the government, is it?
They were from, say Jan Sangh, opposition party, all of them. But they were. You'll always have opposition. But I think the freedom was curtailed. The habeas corpus, which is if my fundamental rights are taken away, I have recourse in the judiciary that the tyranny of the government shall not play havoc with me. That was taken away. So, but she brought in perceived efficiency. The people were scared, so all the corruption, everything stopped. So it looked like a disciplined society, but it was very suffocating. When I graduated, very suffocating.
How long did that last?
75 to 77. 77, January, I think, she declared elections.
She did?
She did declared elections.
She could not have, right? She could have just gone on like that?
You see, it could be, it's a, hypothetical question in a way, because we don't know what would have happened. I think we are deeply rooted in democracy as a nation.
But it was just a 30-year-old country that time, right? So today we are, but as a 30-year-old
But just imagine the Prime Minister had suspended and she thought that she was going to win. She was advised like that. She lost and she tendered resignation. She could have just... You see what Donald Trump did this time? He refused to accept their defeat, right? So it can happen. See, democracies have these accidents everywhere. So she lost, and a opposition government came. So it was. The life was disciplined, but freedom was not there, and I would not compromise the freedom to express myself for anything.
But the government that came after that was
It was
VP Singh.
No, it was Morarji Desai. So it was the old Congress plus Jan Sangh plus Socialist, Madhu Dandavate, all of them. They kind of put together. That was Janata Party, and so they came in. But see, it is difficult to hold a political set of political people with egos and different leaning, different political views. It was bound to break. And it broke with Charan Singh, withdrawing support.
He was a VP.
He was a deputy prime minister.
Deputy prime minister.
He represented the farmer, the agriculture. He came from UP. Mass leader. I don't agree with his views, but I respect him for as a politician that he brought the view. Desai was a very different, South Bombay kind of old Congress. So Desai resigned. Charan Singh came in. And Indira Gandhi supported him from outside. And then she pulled the plug again.
When she knew that she could win the election.
She could win. And the next election was, she won. And then that's how the 80s came. And then she was assassinated. The Khalistan movement happened. She had to do something about it. Religious places of all types, forces do not enter. But when there are anti-aircraft gun and terrorists are there, you have to do something about it. The Prime Minister took that
Operation Bluestar, right?
Operation Bluestar. And I have a feeling she knew that the consequences of that action would be fatal. Absolutely.
Yeah?
I have a feeling that, see, you don't take a decision like this. You probably know that this will have some consequences. General Vaidya, who was the chief of Electoral, he was assassinated in Pune. He was shot dead. He was going to MG Road and he was shot dead. So there was a repercussion of that. Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister. It was a crisis. This thing, India saw a very bad violence. I don't want to go into where what, but India saw a very bad violence.
All India wide, right?
All India. India saw violence when Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. India saw violence when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated. I think it is important for all of us as Indians not to look at each other through the communal eyes. Let's say I do something wrong. So my whole community need not be, banished for it. The community has all kinds of... Every community had noble people and idiots. So if one idiot does something, you can't hold the whole community. I think that happened during when Prime Minister Gandhi was assassinated. Then Rajiv Gandhi was there, and then again Janata Dal cobbled together, because and they fought. VP Singh became Prime Minister.
This was Morarji Desai and Charan Singh, and then VP Singh.
Then Rajiv Gandhi, 84, 89. 89, VP Singh became, he was there. I don't agree with what he did. I'm sure.
In what way?
See, he brought this whole OBC reservation. Now, I'm of the opinion that in our country, though caste came as professional, that, thou shalt do this, your job is to protect, your job is trading, and somewhere it got mutated into this caste system, is my view. But then people got exploited. Right? There were privileged class and there were unprivileged class. And we have thousands of years of exploitation. You have to make rectification, and rectification will have some collateral damage.
Correct.
Right? So but it's a difficult political situation. So again, the politics, same thing, Chandrasekhar, VP Singh, Chandrasekhar. So Congress gave support from outside and pulled the plug.
Chandrasekhar was the
4 or 5 months Prime Minister. VP Singh resigned, he became Prime Minister with outside support. But if you see it from a democracy point of view,
it worked.
These are all the experiments in the larger scheme of democracy. So I think coalition politics, in my opinion, came that if I don't have the majority, let us put a minimum program together so that the government doesn't fall. I think that's when the first NDA government came, UPA government came. So they pulled together like-minded, or at least a program. So see how instances bring political changes for the nation. If you see as a conscientious citizen's point of view, at least Prime Minister is not resigning. There is a Prime Minister and there is a government running, because we want the government to run, not get paralyzed.
But in the election for 19, after that, after VP Singh, that's when in that election turn of Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated.
Rajiv Gandhi he was assassinated, unfortunately, during that time. And so there was, Congress did not, there were... 1991, around that time. So that's when Narasimha Rao, who was about to get into retirement...
But Narasimha Rao was not Rajiv Gandhi's running mate or anything. Would he have been a senior minister in Rajiv Gandhi?
He was an elder statesperson. I don't think he was expecting. He was pulled out of retirement and made Prime Minister.
Oh, is it?
Yes. Yeah. But I think
that the powers that be when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated in the Congress who decided that, because that is a formative period for the country in terms of what happened afterwards, right?
There were politicians. I think Mrs. Sonia Gandhi was obviously shattered with whatever had happened, but there were a bunch of leaders along with her who, because there were more than one person jockeying for the post of Prime Minister.
Was it?
Yeah. So Narasimha Rao was there would be no conflict, there will be no question on that. That's how he came in. He became the turnaround Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got Manmohan Singh. And the reason I say, when we were in the early stages, all people feel that this ITs, 90s and beyond, the first IT project, if I were to put my date back, is the early 70s.
Yeah.
So IT is quite old in the sense that it's like entrepreneurship. We say that sometimes you may have a longer life cycle of an entrepreneur. So first few years can be just building the platform and then you take off.
Correct.
Similarly, IT, I think, 70s and 80s was where the foundations were being laid. And then, TCS was there, bunch of companies were there. Wipro came in the 80s, Infosys early 80s, late 79, and then they grew. Infosys did an IPO in 94, I think. It was undescribed, the people still didn't understand. But it set an example. The liberalization helped because the economy grew, the bureaucratic controls went down. Otherwise, importing a computer was like getting blood out of stone. We learned to write simulators and other things because people would never get the machine on which you were to deliver your software. It took 8 months, 9 months, 214% duty. In the 80s, the 214%, I think if I recall, if there's an equipment worth $100, its landed price in India post-custom was $314.
That's crazy.
3 hours of getting $100 RBI, you have to stand in front to get the foreign exchange. So it was tough time. You had
to go to the RBI to get foreign exchange. Right?
Well, that was the process. So the company made it easy by not having to stand for that long. But that was the process.
So your career from 78 to 91, 92 kind of coincided with very difficult political situation with 2 assassinations.
Yes.
Hung parliament.
Yes.
And a foreign reserve that had almost gone down to whatever.
Correct.
Few weeks.
Correct.
But at the same time, at professionally, you were building the foundation for India's most stellar wealth creating service industry post 1991. So did you see that happening? Because it would have been very difficult and depressing to see what was happening outside.
Because you only saw Fiat and Ambassador. We couldn't afford that also. It was, I think, these were pinpricks which were around.
Correct.
But professionally, it was extremely satisfying. To give you, Mr. Kohli was from MIT in 1948 and he saw way ahead.
The father of the Indian
Ram, with whom I worked, is from UCLA. Dr. Jain, his peer, he was a PhD from Hawaii. And we were all, koi IIT Bombay, koi IIT Madras, koi one or two guys from IIM. We had someone from Berkeley. So we were an eclectic bunch, which we were enjoying working at Air India building. So I
Building
think
out TCS.
building out TCS. TCS at that time was an environment. I don't know if TCS of today with 500, 600,000, the number of zeros I can't count on right side, would be of that time. But it's again the difference between a startup and a large corporation.
Yeah.
So
Also, going out of the country at that time was not easy. Like, I remember IT being one of the few sectors where people started going out of the country a lot, taking big
my
flights.
cousins in Indore wanted to put a news item in the local newspaper that I was going abroad. I said, look, I have not done anything great. So when
Really?
Yeah. Deepak Chacha, you wanted to do that.
Why?
Because, you see, nobody went abroad that time.
So he thought it was news.
It was worth. So, abroad जाना है ना, बहुत अच्छी बात है. मैंने ऐसा बहुत ज़्यादा तीर नहीं मारा है मैंने, शांति से. ऐसी कोई बड़ी बात नहीं, काम करने जा रहा हूँ.
But 1978 you went to Holland and did a lot of these offsites.
8 years. So we had, TCS had a, and I'm sure I'll talk about TCS, but there were good companies there. Very good companies. In fact, many of the companies started in 70s. TCS had a global business. TCS had a very large India business. So many of the banks, financial institutions, TCS automated them. American Express, I think, was a customer since 79, 78. I went to work for a bank in New York. I would work for another bank in Rotterdam. So good thing was that we got, after a good education by the government, we got good international exposure.
Correct.
So one of the things, Shantanu, I feel that, which is what I see two India today, or three Indias. One is the younger generation, the mobile generation. You guys, you came into prosperity, very confident. And I think some of people of my generation feel that, आजकल का generation, all that stuff. But to me,
What do they feel?
इनको पैसे की कदर नहीं है वो. I mean, it's like, Sunil Gavaskar complaining about Virat Kohli. He laid the foundation, Sachin Tendulkar took it forward, and these things happen in America.
Evolution.
See, 50s, Great Depression.
In 1929.
29, very difficult time.
Then World War II.
FDR came, World War II, FDR came. United States laid the foundation for growth. So the Americans who lived in the 30s and 20s and the Americans who came in 50s, 60s,
They're very different life.
very different. So this is societal change, So we were, so the people who did not benefit from an ecosystem that I benefited from never became confident in our generation. They were always not very confident. Because we were not just in IT, but we were part of a team that created offshore. We worked with them, we created ourselves. So we were confident to begin with. So it doesn't baffle me. It doesn't, if I have to do something by myself first time, I don't get scared of it. I might fail, but then somebody in Silicon Valley also might fail. That's the way it is. You guys, younger generation is like that. But there is a part of India which is still not very confident. And I think it's better because you don't want them to drag the country behind. Because there are poor people who need to be looked after.
Correct.
If I see a global thing, don't get scared. I think the time has come for everyone. And I'm not saying about just India. I think globally everybody had a shot at it now. Everybody has a shot because technology has brought you together.
Correct.
I mean, look at the IT now. Brazil is there, Philippines is there,
Oh, really?
East Europe is there. So, India not just created a service industry here, but it's gone global from there. So,
By the time India liberalized, you had already spent 13, 14 years
yeah.
in the industry, building out the IT industry, kind of seeing it reap rewards, spent a lot of time outside India. I was born at that time. And then 96, maybe at the age of 40, 41, you and mom decided to do the most counterintuitive thing of people of that generation, which is to come from US to India. Everyone was going the other way. But you guys decided to come back. Just talk me through some of that. Again, I think there is a deep seeds of patriotism that come into some of these life choices of yours. Was it that? Was it something else? What was the?
I think
You had a flourishing career. Like you could have
the flourishing career.
doing what you want in the US, like living the classical American dream.
Classical, we could have done that.
Yeah.
I think we could have done that. The one was and these are not in any particular order, but the family was here. You know, many times your family, brother is there, sister is there, uncle, somebody is out there. In our case, we were the only one. The whole family was here.
Mom side and your side.
Both sides, mom side, my side also. Achha, being the eldest and coming out of this transition from where we were kind of the anchor. So didn't feel like leaving them here. That was what, I mean, it was always at the back of our mind whenever we went there. That was one. I also felt that having seen my professional career in India was very satisfying. Obviously there is relatively, if you're in US, you make certain dollars here, but professional growth was very good. Whenever I went and spoke with people, I never felt anything else. So, and the career choices also came. Most important was first time, we used to sign a contract in TCS. They'll come back and, be in the company for 2 years and all that. So then at the trenches, there used to be a lot of debate, yaar, kyun sign karna hai and all that. So my view to all whenever ये discussion होता था, मैं यार देखो, नहीं जाना हो तो sign मत करो. लेकिन एक बार आपने अगर एक बार contract sign किया है, then don't now say कि I will not go by the terms of the contract.
Correct.
And first time I went, I think it was good that the salary was getting deposited here and I was living and it helped the family. So I never felt like doing something which was to do that. I would have probably gone for a PhD or master's and then entered the American system. That need did not arise from that perspective. The opportunity to be TechM or MBT there, CEO, was good. So there was no need, and those 5 years for extremely good company did very well. I was lucky that all the levers were aligned. It's like taking the cricket analogy, Shantanu. When you're destined to hit a century or double century, things just fall in place.
Correct.
Even if you hit an uppish shot, वो कोई catch नहीं करता है या छोड़ देता है.
The pitch is good. You win the toss.
Pitch is good.
Weather is great.
The other thing that happened was the 12 years in TCS and the 4 years in IMR were I was lucky to have people who were leaders, not managers, as my boss. See, the difference between a leader and a manager is manager manages. So they are more involved. They want to review everything, stuff like that. The leader...
Does that curtail creativity and...
It does. My view is it curtail. Management and control are together. Leadership, enablement, incentive, empowerment is there. So 2 things happened with Mr. Kohli, Ram Durai, Nirmal Jain, the leadership in TCS, my seniors. I worked with Suri. They were all my first boss. Nagarajan, Chinnuswamy. They were, we were kind of, the difference was, तुम कब IIT से निकले, मैं कब निकला था. So we were all of the same thing. And I think that was, it shaped my thinking also. That, if you have smart people around you, उनको परेशान मत करो. Every time. So I was shaped by that. And I think some of that I brought to TechMahindra. Because, see, we worked very hard at that time. You know how I used to travel once.
Crazy.
Monday to Monday, I traveled 3 times to London and your mom was livid कि लोग Bombay नहीं जाते, तुम London जाते हो 3 बार. She used to bring all of us down to earth, So it was very hard work. But I said, work is hard, but let's not make our lives hard.
Correct.
So we were always enjoying. Even today also, when I meet my colleagues, and they all enjoyed those times. So I think that shaped in a way.
You're
Also,
also a young CEO at 40, 41 to be a
so
CEO.
40, 41, but nowadays,
No, of
by
course.
today's standards, it was old.
No, but to be a corporate CEO through a career for a
Exactly.
in a company where there is conglomeratized
Yeah,
company, it's not easy to be a CEO at 40,
It's not.
41.
And I think it was, the board and the Mahindra management, leadership, Keshav Mahindra, Anand Mahindra, they were looking for a CEO to take a step like this, to take a unknown guy who's technically sound, no experience in business, to make a CEO, expecting that transition will happen. That is leadership.
Correct.
Those risks are leadership. I don't know today, but I think quality of leadership has gone down a little bit. Because I'm not saying that all CEOs have financial pressure, growth pressures and everything. But you don't have to make life miserable, which is what I find around when I talk to people, To give you an example, why is interviewing such a complex affair today? I mean, first rounds, I don't think I would have been, I am employable today. 5 interviews, I don't have patience to go through it.
Yeah.
So I think that for whatever reason, the complexity has gone up. I think it's a difficult one. There is more opportunity, but complexity has also gone up. So coming back to your original point, I think we like US. We have a lot of friends there, but living choices ended up being in India, and no regret on that. I think it's great.
But again, your big move to India coincided with Narasimha Rao's government kind of being replaced by Vajpayee's government for 13 days.
13 days, yeah.
So talk about, I know you have a lot of respect for Mr. Vajpayee as, one of the most eminent opposition leaders for a long time.
In fact, it's in the social media also. I think was it the American ambassador or someone to whom Nehru introduced young Vajpayee as potentially a future Prime Minister of India.
Nehru, was it?
Yes.
How young was Vajpayee at that time?
He was, I think, somewhere in 50s. So he must have been first time MP.
In his late 30s.
Very, very strong debates. If you see the debates of that time, they were very strong debates. Ram Manohar, Mr. Lohia, they were serious debates in the parliament. What's happening today is barbarism, if I can be very brutal about it. So I'm not saying good politicians don't exist, but the overarching thing is not very good. It's not good for democracy.
It's immature, right? I don't know. There's so much content, and there's something coming up on Twitter feed, something on Instagram. You see only 1 minute of someone kind of really being very brutally vocal, but you don't see the whole, like a speaker.
You don't see the whole
for
thing.
10 hours, right? So
Correct.
if you don't see context, you just see small bit. Like people who are seeing news are just seeing very small context-free new pieces of news. So we don't know whether the narrative.
See, when I see the parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, hitting the well of the house and standing and shouting is not constitutional proprietary. You are not to do that. There is speaker, there is deputy speaker, there is a decorum, there is 0 hour. You ask a question. There is a whole Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha secretariat to do that, and you are a member of parliament. So that I think needs to straighten up. But coming to Vajpayee, he didn't muster popular vote. He had to resign, and then he came back as 2 years later, he ran a full course. I think taking not from a party perspective, but if you see Prime Minister Nehru, he was involved in 3 elections, he ran them hands down. So people did not feel there was anything other than Congress. 1967 elections, bunch of non-Congress government showed up. They were called SVD, Sanyukta Vidhayak Dal. That means it was a non-Congress government. So people at that time were expressing their displeasure of the Congress government, and rightfully so. People expressed that displeasure again with Indira Gandhi. People brought her back because they expressed displeasure with the alternative dispensation. Same thing with, so people have been exercising their franchise to change the government locally or centrally. And that is the beauty of democracy that I see.
Correct.
That is the beauty. The only thing is I think the political functionaries, their life is tough. I mean, I don't think I can survive there even for a day. But I think they need to take this into account that people, and especially with today's technology and visibility, I think it's become, they are very good politicians. They understand everything. They're very smart. I think some of these, the constitutional propriety, and I'll give you an example of that. See, the way parliamentary democracy works is you take a state assembly or you take Lok Sabha. The party or the coalition that has the majority, the leader of that is called for, leader of that becomes the chief minister or the prime minister.
Correct.
Right? Who will elect the leader? The MLAs.
Correct.
What do you see in the newspaper today? The central leadership will decide whosoever is our leader. Why? If you see the first set of chief ministers that India had, they were all local leaders. They were powerful local leaders. You take Maharashtra, you take Karnataka, you take...
Who were they? Who were?
You take, for example, early chief ministers, Ravi Shankar Shukla in Madhya Pradesh. I don't remember, Maharashtra was, I think, early stage. Then VP Naik came. There are a bunch of leaders. The most eminent example is when Kerala was formed, EMS Namboodiripad. He won the election. He was a communist. He was in the Indian National Congress during freedom. He ran the socialist side of it. But his leaning was socialist.
Correct.
Right? Now, he was from the Communist Party of India. In Communist Party, CPI broke to CPI and Marxist CPI. He was part of the Marxist. No? Scholar, but communist. How can communist run a government in a democracy? This was the question.
Correct.
And Nehru was very reluctant to not let him become the chief minister.
He could have stopped him if he wanted to.
He was finally forced to. So Nehru resisted that. And I'm sure if you talk to the American politicians, or even today at that time, how can a communist be? See, communist is an ideology. Democracy is government by the people. If people elect a communist ideology person to run the government, so be it.
So be it.
That happened in that time.
Okay.
So that piece, that elections are important. People who get elected will become the constitutional office, it means the chief minister, whatever it is, speakers and all that. I think that has compromised. I think it started with Prime Minister Gandhi, Indira Gandhi. It started with her. That she started,
See, that's the thing. No, when someone has very...
I mean, I'm just observing. I have a lot of respect for Indira Gandhi for what she did.
Yeah.
And every prime minister, you'll see a credit and a debit,
No, but that's the thing. No, when someone becomes extremely popular, as Ms. Gandhi was, then state elections become for the Congress. Voting for the Congress becomes voting for her, not voting for the local leader.
Correct.
Like today,
Correct.
if I'm voting for the BJP,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm voting for the local leader, or even in local city elections.
You know why?
I'm voting for Mr. Modi.
If you build,
That's the power of the popular leader.
that's a power of the popular leader. But then how come independence had such a galaxy of leaders who came together? So there is a mechanism by which bunch of powerful leaders can come together. There could be a leader of the leader.
But that was a very big external motivation of independence.
Exactly.
So you had, like, everyone was junior to the goal. Today, we don't have an external motivator which is like a war or independence and all.
Building India, is it any less?
No, I agree with that.
If building India, it's not less. So I think it is incumbent on the leadership not to mess around with that piece. I don't think a popular leader, let's take 3 examples or 4 examples. Nehru, Indira Gandhi Limited, Prime Minister Bajpayee and Narayan Modi. These 4 individuals, and there could be more, these 4 individuals, because their sheer power of their personality, their dedication, their appeal to masses, would still be the leader of leader. You don't have to make the rest of the stack less because it hurts democracy. It has become a standard operating procedure today. The party leadership will decide. To me, this is like a knife in the constitution of federal structure of India. Because India is a federal
Republic.
It is a collection of states, and it was difficult to assemble it.
Yes.
It was difficult to assemble it.
We started with 17 or 19 states, right?
Something like that.
And we kept creating states.
Keep creating.
Divided states.
Divided states.
And have kept them together.
Yeah. And other thing I must also another share with you is, initially the British run India and they came together. And then there was a 56 around that time state representation. India created states based on along linguistic lines. That's how Maharashtra came and all that. There was a lot of criticism because people who wanted united India saw this as a divisive. Beauty of India is India did not divide. Yes, we have some nation of this size will always have problems. Huh? We didn't divide. One thing which I find the benefit of that was that local literature, languages have all flourished.
Correct.
All flourished. Just imagine if you had done, XYZ along the longitude and latitude, it would have been a mess.
Correct.
So, I don't think at that time people realize that it'll go to do that because these are calls you make.
Yeah.
Today, country is a lot more cohesive. I remember I went to Madras first time on TCS project in 1981.
First time ever.
My senior Mahalingam was he was at the backside of Crompton Greaves, small office, and we did a management consulting for a company there, Lucas TVS, and I went there. And that Madras or Chennai was very different than today. Today you see
Hindi speaking.
It's just melting pot. So I think we have a lot more strength as a collection, as a federation.
Correct.
United. And, actually, if you see the constitution, it was being framed. Naming of India was also a debate.
Okay, what were the options?
Options were like Soviet Rus, the Soviet Russia, United Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. That could have been Union of...
Really?
Yeah. United States of India. Finally, they chose India.
Really?
Yeah. See, I think those who are interested...
United States of India was an option, is it?
India was an option. It made sense. America, United States of America, United States of India.
Wow.
India, the notion came during, there was a subcontinent. I think we had that notion long back before, I think British gave it a physical, tangible shape. It happened much before because this was a culturally together, not just India, but the current Pakistan, Afghanistan, right up to Iran, that whole place. But those were the options, and it was called India or Bharat. So, like in school, हम लोग तो हिंदी में पढ़ते थे ना, तो one sentence, अनेकता में एकता ही भारतीय संस्कृति की सबसे बड़ी विशेषता है. So all of us are unity among diversity and all that. I think we lived up to that point. And because of job, you study in Lucknow, you study in Chandigarh, and you go and work in Chennai, and you're out there and you work in Delhi, all of this. In fact, this startup, which is home-cooked meal of local variety in a place where that is not the one. Like, for example, getting good chole bhature in Chennai and getting excellent idli in Chandigarh. The startups were doing that. So these things have come together because of these things. So I think the constitutional proprietary, that my feeling is that all elected representatives somewhere must go through some course. That I cannot make a speech which is hitting the preamble of India.
Correct.
I should not make a speech which, we have laws like that, but these people have especially at the local level, some of these politicians, they learn it once, the smart ones figure it out, but there are some who do loose talk. I think that loose talk didn't happen as much during when I was child. That happens a lot more and it hurts me. Because this is the time, if I take the cricket analogy, this is the session for India. Where we need to get to the top and without any animosity.
Correct.
Without any animosity.
You're right. I completely agree. I think the nation building purpose that started as India shining in 2002, 2003. Around the time when you started up.
Exactly.
You started up at the time when India
2002. We did our company in 2002, 2003.
Correct. But it did not play out as much. We had an equity bull run market in the late 2000s to 2010.
Correct.
Then we had the global financial crisis.
Right.
When we came out of it, then actual startups in India started, like Startup 2.0.
Correct.
The Flipkarts and InMobis and Olas of the world became big. But manufacturing was not big.
Now,
11 to 20, we did not export as much as we should have.
Correct.
Manufacturing was still. Now everything is coming together.
Everything is coming together so well.
We have government and we have great enterprise builders. So now I think the real India...
It's like the Silicon Valley, everything came together.
Correct.
During the 70s, 80s, everything came together and Silicon Valley just bloomed. Big companies came, technology companies came, the whole ecosystem came, the investors came, the VCs came. If you have to hire, the hiring was there. All of this is coming together. Here it is coming together at the national level.
Yeah.
So I think it's an opportunity that we don't want to get dragged down with.
What are and I know that you live in Pune and I have driven next to you while you're driving the car and giving all sorts of, I cannot name the words here on the podcast to the powers that be or people who don't respect infrastructure of Pune, for example, where it was a city we've been living for now 25, 26 years, but it's not what it was.
It's a city which is, to me, the only city in that class which is not a capital. If you notice, all of us know that. Everything else is a capital. So when the capital is, there is a seat of the government. Automatically gets the attention. Pune, there is one part. Pune, being a well-run city for quite some time, has come in its way. Because if you talk, it's nice. In spite of all this, it is still good. What is not good for Pune is, if you are to have that city deliver what it has delivered so far, if you go with this, the city will go down. I mean, I feel personally that the constitution, while the different parts of the constitution go right from union to states to union territory all the way to panchayat, cities have not been given the power enshrined in the constitution. So, appointment of the city, there is a mayor, but there is a IAS officer. I'm not saying IAS officers are bad, but cities don't have a CEO.
Yeah.
So that they can build on themselves.
Cities need to be a PNL. I completely agree.
Exactly. I mean, I remember when I used to travel in Deccan Queen to Mumbai when I was in TCS, adding a bogie, you had to take permission from Delhi. Why?
Really?
Yeah. Why do you have to go to if the railway minister does not understand Mumbai-Pune traffic? It can happen, right?
Yeah.
National politician, not very sensitized, different priorities. So why does I think there is a residue of, because we came together under most tragic circumstances as a nation, centralization is ingrained. टूट जाएगा सब कुछ. I think we need to start relaxing now. Have more power locally. Mahatma Gandhi said, make the village the most powerful or the entity. I don't think people understood what he was saying. Though we have done that, panchayati, all of that stuff is done. Cities need to be more independent, constitutionally supported. Like state is.
Yeah. Urban management is a huge issue.
I mean, I'm not an expert in constitution, so I could be, some constitutional expert might say, "तुम क्या बात कर रहे हो?" But मुझे दिखता है कि Pune doesn't have the, that. If it had a CEO, it would have done very well.
A lot of people feel that, that boundaried governance units, whether it's city or state, etc., like run, or even country, like Singapore is run by a CEO.
Exactly.
Singapore is run the PNL, and it's very clear what the rules are of that PNL. So, no, but my broader point was, we are now making a lot of headway, right? I think infrastructure, by the way, and I talk about this a lot with a lot of people, but who come on the show. But given your passion for nation building and the fact that you've kind of spent your life building companies, now investing in companies,
in little ways,
but in India, for India, we are at a stage where we can slingshot, and infrastructure is getting built out.
Correct.
Roads, payment infra, banking infra,
Amazing.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
We have a broadly safe borders. We have an amazingly young demographic.
Correct.
We now have capital.
Capital.
Getting richer. Countries getting... That is Chirag, you know Chirag well, right? So Chirag gave an amazing stat. $3.5 trillion GDP of India. The first trillion took 64 years to build.
The rest,
The second trillion took 9 years. The third trillion has taken only 5. The fourth trillion might take 2. And we might get the next trillion in less than a year.
correct.
It's the power of compounding.
Yeah.
That's happening now.
That's happening.
Consumption is going up.
Correct.
India's aspirations are falling. But if you were to take a step back as a socialist critic of not just government, but of the nation, which includes government, enterprise, the people, and that whole the zeitgeist of what builds the country for the next 25, 30 years. What would your warnings be? Like where do you think we might just go wrong on this? What should we be very careful about?
And I would sort of, very broadly, see, if you look at it as a game or a sport, take tennis, football, cricket, there comes a time when if you don't do anything haphazard, you will win. That happens, right? I think we're at that stage. So, very broadly,
The game is ours to win, basically.
game is ours to lose now. People should not make it more difficult for the government.
And
We still in tax churana. Dunya bhar ki gandagi, all these things. If I have to pay tax, pay tax. I think most people who don't pay tax actually can afford it. Can afford a lot more. Do that. Don't say that tax kaam nahi karta, isliye I have right not to pay tax. You don't have right anything like this. You don't bloody have right. In fact, there is responsibilities ingrained in the constitution. You better do that. So, if you do that and then hold politicians responsible, I'm doing my part now, you do your part. See, what is the reason? The best prime minister is handicapped by the rest of the system. So, if the rest of the system plays little bit of a tango, you take real estate industry, manufacturing industry, you take retail industry, you take the infrastructure, logistics, IT, all of these industries coming together, just be normal law-abiding citizens, law-abiding. Build that mindset. It'll make it easy for the government. It'll also put moral pressure on the government not to do anything. They say, if you do that, I think we will get the trillion faster. More important, if you get to the trillion, but you are able to lift the rest. I'm saying, today I always feel that jobs will be created by small companies. I'm not only saying startups, entrepreneurs.
Correct.
If I have an engineering company which is, say, 10 crore, and because of the opportunity I'm making 150 crore, I'm going to employ some people.
Correct.
And say 10,000 of them, 1 million of them do it, I think the jobs will come.
No, SMEs and MSMEs are the big value of an
And
enterprise.
we'll not only create jobs in India, we'll create jobs outside also.
Correct.
So, but we have to stay disciplined on that. So, both sides, government and this thing, 50-50. I'm saying I think government has done a lot. Government needs to do a lot. I'm not denying that. People also need to now start playing like a first world society. First world means don't break the law. Don't think, you're at the receiving end. Don't expect too much. Step out and do things yourself. At least those of us who can.
Yeah.
Then we'll lift everybody else.
Do you think it's a mindset issue for India, which is like
Lot of
colonialized, poor?
Mindset issue है. आप दुकान में जाओ तो सर आपको GST भरना है कि नहीं? You and I get क्यों नहीं भरना है? क्यों नहीं? Yeah, just the other day, we were in the shop and said tax क्यों नहीं भर? Tax क्यों नहीं देते हो तुम? And there are, as we call the wise one of them, they will question tax का कुछ फायदा तो होता नहीं है, and therefore I am abrogating to not paying tax. Who gave you the right? When you have a house and which is being protected, there is police around, right?
On the roads.
We are living in a reasonably safe, right?
Yeah.
So some government is. I think we need to take a slightly more broader view where we are. I think cricket is a good, this thing that the whole team comes together. Ki, now is our time. Now next 2 sessions, and you take some, like the Australia when Ashwin and took blows, Pujara took the blows. They were taking physical blows on the body to win a match for India. Right? To take some blows, do something, paying tax, you don't like it, but still pay it.
Yeah.
Pay the tax, abide by the law, simple, I'm not asking very big thing, don't break the, red light. You will build a temperament of following the law. Temperament of following the law puts pressure on public servants, politicians, because they will not do it if they know that people are going to reject them. That's the power of democracy, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
A little bit utopian it might sound, but you see Japanese, they've gone up and down, but the law breaking is very minimal there at the bottom level.
Yeah.
So
the average person on the road, and
it doesn't.
You're right. But in India, it's very, like, we have so many other problems, right? I think because we've been so resource starved for so long,
But not anymore now.
we still have this conditioning to be front in the line. कि खत्म हो जाएगा, हमको दूध चाहिए. For example, have you seen, like, when Indian airlines are boarding at international
I
airports?
was saying change that mindset.
No, those are the rich people. Imagine Heathrow or Chicago or New York. These are people, Indians who are there, are rich Indians.
Correct.
By every measure, they're rich because they're taking an international flight. But when that flight is boarding, you all congregate at the entry as if I don't get in, the plane is leaving without me.
Leave without me, or मेरा bag रह जाएगा.
So if at the very top, that conditioning is there, how is it? It's very hard to expect people, the average Indian person, to not feel resource starved and want to grab their share,
But if you
save
get
their
to
tax,
number-
etc.
You get to number one spot. You need to do something different. As a nation, as a society, we have aspiration to get to the top, right? We are getting there. Now, what do we have to do? I mean, we always discuss is I'm at this level of growth.
Yeah.
I need to go to the next level, and you have done that, I have done that. We question our team. We try to say what has brought us here will not take us forward. This is a very, all CEOs, all of us think, यहाँ तक तो आ गए, इसके आगे का रास्ता कैसा है? It's a thought in every CEO's
But
mind.
for a CEO, it's 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000, 140 crore people.
So that is where the political leadership comes in. I mean, they have a hard task, and Prime Minister has the hardest task in front of the Prime Minister. But you can only do so much unless you are helped by others. See, very few times people like Gandhi come on the face of the earth to mobilize big time on a disruptive idea. See, the reason I feel always awed by Mahatma Gandhi was he took exactly the opposite view. Then he took exactly the opposite view, but he mobilized
The country.
He mobilized the country. He mobilized not only the country, he had intellectuals, he had very rich people give up richness. So very few times you will have the benefit of a leader like that. But that doesn't mean you don't make progress.
But I agree with you. Now that I talk about it, our city of Indore, for example, was filthy 20 years back.
Exactly.
Filthy and conditioned to just throw all those fast food restaurants which used to enjoy Sarafa and so on. They used to be messy at night and early in the morning. Today is the cleanest city in the country for 7 years running now, 7 years.
7 years. So people can do it if they decide.
That's the
People
thing.
can do it.
Once it becomes a question of respect, we are attaching ourselves. So every person of Indore feels attached to Indore as a city.
Exactly.
Now my city should come first.
Correct.
But that feeling should now translate to my country should come first. And hence I cannot throw a tissue paper on the ground.
Correct. And as you rightly said, sometimes you might find a very poor, not so formally educated person very wise. And you might find someone who's educated but not so wise on these things.
Correct.
On civil. I mean, I've seen that, this happens. So I think that environment has to be created. And sometimes it does get created. Just to give you an idea, if you look at IT industry, it is broadly, I'm not saying everything is 100%, but broadly formed on the merit, good professionalism, globally competitive, and clean business practices.
Zero corruption.
Zero corruption. All of this stuff is there. So when you deal with the government, that's what they expect. I'll give you an example. When we started Mojo Networks, we were in a clutch of apartments. We had taken them like a classical garage.
Where?
In Aundh, in Pune. Now, electricity bill, उस ज़माने में electricity bill आता था, physically you go and pay it. So Maharashtra electricity board का bill ही नहीं आया, 2 महीना 3 महीना हो गया. So I told our admin कि यार bill नहीं आया है.
कुमार.
No, Sagar Ganu.
हाँ.
कि काट देंगे आके नहीं तो. And then we are running our servers and this and I don't want this to. So he went and approached कि we need a bill. It didn't show up again. So I said, Sagar, make sure that it doesn't make it. Again wrote. It got somewhere communicated to their the squad that finally cuts the electricity. So those guys came, bomb, and they go to a place where several notices have happened, you are stealing the electricity, and they finally cut the cord. And they came. And so I said, what happened? And I told them, look, we are looking for a bill. You know what he said? साहेब मला माहिती असतं ही IT कंपनीत मी आलोच नसतो. IT कंपनीमध्ये असं कधी होत नाही.
You should say in Hindi what he said.
कि अगर मुझे मालूम होता कि ये सॉफ्टवेयर IT कंपनी है तो मैं यहाँ आता ही नहीं. हम तो कनेक्शन कट करने जाते हैं जहाँ बदमाश लोग होते हैं. I said, thank you very much for thinking like that. Yeah. So that is the environment that is, that's their perception. So if you ask me, is entire IT, there will be some outliers and all that. There will be some people like that. By and large, an industry has been created where people believe it is run merit. And we are seeing that it's become international. We bring foreign exchange. We have created Indians who are globally competitive now. We brought wealth. And not just the software companies, but the whole ecosystem of vendors who service the IT companies. And simple CEOs, we were all programmers, debugging. Few of my friends who went on to become CEOs, we would go to Samrat at Air India building near. रात को 9 बजे कंप्यूटर मिलने वाला है, 10 बजे प्रोग्राम डिबग करते थे वहाँ जाके. We used to take the output. So we were all, basically straightforward professionals. Industry grew. Also, other thing I must share with you is that last 50 years has seen amazing growth of computing right from calculators to scientific computing to mainframe computing to some breakthrough. And I want to go into the kind of technology breakthroughs that came about. Computing has gone from that to now the mobile in our hand. This whole 50 years saw that. Software was critical piece and India plugged in that in a big time.
Correct.
Right? And that's how the growth happened. I personally feel we have just begun. The journey of computing is only 50% done. Next 50 years we'll see some amazing stuff happen. Now at that stage you have to play with that mindset. You can't play with a colonial defeatist mindset. नहीं होगा, रड़े पड़ा जो है ना वो मतलब है, रोतला मत बनो आप. You have to figure it out. Especially people, younger generation doesn't have the handicaps, right? Some of us remember that, but let's forget that and be the part of the game. If 50%, other day I was in a conference, I said, 50% of population is going to live in cities in 30 years. I said, why do we need cities? With technology, with digitization, the concept of city can disappear and it will be uniform population everywhere. Enough landmass. So think I'm not saying that is the right solution, but it's
Infrastructure
out of the box.
Infra development will lead to that in some way.
Will somewhere lead
Some
to that.
decongestion and moving.
Decongestion will happen, all that. And I'm saying maybe cities also come up. I'm not saying that, but change the rules of the game, see what is needed, and play to that to become. See, you don't become leader until you do something different.
That India, for example, has 4 metros and maybe 20 tier 1 towns. China, for example, has 15 metros and 100 tier 1 towns. So, the moment you become, the country progresses, infra development happens, cities decongest, and you have mini cities and kind of twin cities.
Like Europe also, I think sort of, that. So, it could happen in India also. And I think it will make life better. Much better. Agriculture, I think its time has come.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think its time has come. So, people are tired of
small land holding. A lot of those issues are there which kind of prevent mechanization.
So, now we have to see what that's exactly, we have to figure out, tell people that small land holdings don't work. So, solve the problem.
Consolidation.
Yeah, consolidation. And farmers are not stupid. they know economics very well, and they are the hardest hit. So, I think somewhere we are a country in motion, but I think accelerating that is important.
Are you positive about the future?
I'm very positive about the future. I'm very positive.
That's why you do all this angel investing at the speed.
With angel investing. See, in spite of all this, not so perfect governments, changing political landscape, different prime ministers, with all the experiments we have come this far, why would I not be optimistic?
No, I agree. So this has been an amazing conversation. I think every time we do dinner table conversations about politics, and I always feel that this should happen in the barbershop. It's finally happened in the barbershop.
It was wonderful.
But we have a lot of fans of you in the office and around who have been wanting to see. So I'm sure they'll be very excited to see. But I think we've just scratched the surface. Because we've spoken about politics and constitution and history of India, which is important given...
You just probably 0.00001%, because if you recall, I created these notes and I was just going through my own memories, but didn't want to completely depend on my memories. So I wrote down how Indian constitution has imbibed and embellished ideas in other constitution. Take the British, UK constitution, the American constitution, the Irish constitution, what we have done better, and how all of that we are in that league where design constitution. By the way, UK doesn't have it's a constitution which is evolved based on conventions instead of, because they never had one big event like America or India where constitution is.
They have this convention and
all that.
It's not even written, right? Is it documented or it's
not? It is a combination, as I understand, of many conventions.
But those conventions, are they written anywhere? They're not.
Some of them, there are some documents, and there are some. So British have it's worked very well for them. So it's not written in the sense, there's a preamble, somebody designed the preamble, we the people, all that stuff is not there. But India has it. US obviously has it. There is a difference though, US, when it came to becoming a nation, it said all men are created equal. That means the creator has given you status. The state doesn't give you. In India, the state is ensuring that.
What did India say?
India said we are giving ourselves this constitution.
All Indians are equal.
So we have, in preamble, the equality, justice, fraternity, all of this stuff. Then 42nd Amendment in 76. I was not for it, but now I feel some of it is good. Socialist was introduced. Unity and I think integrity was introduced very, very recently. So, but I think original preamble was good. The state is giving you equality, fraternity and everything. In US saying that we were created equal. Nobody, even state doesn't do it. We were created equal as men. All men are created equal. Or all human beings are created equal to be, gender. So these are profound things. I think, maybe I studied and I became very conscious of it and I like what we have. Little bit of it in every Indian, I think, will make Indian behave tax nature aayega, ye nahi karega. You know, all this stuff. You know, literally people do it because they don't see anything else.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get our schools to do a better job of telling what we have done. You know, sometimes they, as you yourself told me once when you were in 7th or 8th grade, that marks laane ke liye I read this, but for history I read the other book.
Yeah.
And I felt good that you knew the real history versus but I think the real history should be taught. Yes, absolutely.
I completely agree with you. Given like every time I've seen you, whether you were a very, very nascent entrepreneur fighting with customs, to your stories in your childhood and so on, you never compromised on principle and integrity. Zero. Ever since. And I think that you have done that when you were privileged and made your own money, and you did that when you did not have anything, shows that it is possible for a nation who is growing to behave first world and aspire to be that way, even though today things might be difficult. It is possible to do it.
And see, Indians are very emotional.
Because a lot of people will be watching and be like, he's a CEO, he's super rich. But that's not the case.
No.
You will not steal tax, not because you don't need it, but you didn't do it even before.
It was not an option. I'm going to give you an example. I think when I was in 7th or 8th, somewhere 5th, 6th, 7th, I must have got some insanely good marks for whatever reason. And so our school headmaster came home and congratulated, told your Dadi, he's doing well. Your Dadi told me 2 things. कि बेटा कितने भी बड़े बनो पैर जमीन पे होने चाहिए. I mean, no ego, no arrogance. Second is, when it comes to ethics, नीति, इसको कभी compromise. When you are a child, when your mother tells you that, it has a lasting impression on you. So, I think maybe some of these things came about. I think when I was growing up, Shantanu, money was not there, but community, well-being, encouragement, genuineness existed. It exists today also, but today we also have prosperity. At least some good part of India has prosperity. I mean, a lot of people have been lifted out of poverty line. I mean, if you see the service providers today, Mahadev Kaka, our driver, his both children have done very well.
Yeah.
Kranti's son, kids
will lift their parents out. Absolutely.
The kids lift their parents. The parents themselves become aware of it. So I think it's not just, getting a IIT or something. Everybody, I think we have a chance to be disciplined, focused, and make for the next 10, 15 years.
Amazing. I think our next episode should be on the journey of IT industry, Tech Mahindra, then starting up and then exiting. That 40 years would be a great episode too. We didn't get into it a lot today. We just kind of drew parallels to India. But I think India has been a huge topic of congruence amongst people who have come in the barbershop. So I thought, given what we speak about at home, bringing you in to talk about that would be amazing. Just from a more historic and, evolution of the country standpoint. So that's been amazing.
And just to give you an idea, people talk about Subhash Chandra Bose versus Nehru, Savarkar versus Gandhi. And there are books. I mean, there is a Bose and Nehru parallel lives, and you see their letters to each other. I was ashamed to say that they were against each other.
Yeah.
There was a different level of things. So
country came first.
Country came first for them. Country came first. I think differences will always be there. I think we need to put them aside and move forward.
It was a pleasure having you at the barbershop. I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Oh, I mean, it's always, we do it in bits and pieces at home, but this was very good. I hope, your viewers like it. It's a little different than what you've been doing. But
I think they will lap it up.
Thanks, Shantanu.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Take care.